Hi, Daniel. Welcome to the launch video for using sensors with the Raspberry Pi Pico. Thank you very much for being here today. And I was just wondering if you could talk for a couple of minutes about yourself and about your great new book.
Okay, glad to be here. Well, I am a hardware engineer, you could say, an electronic engineer for a long time, but I have always worked with software, not hardware. And for the last, say, 20 years, I've been working with writing software firmware for microcontrollers. And so this is what I do for work and also for as a hobby. I've been working in Blade with microcontrollers for a long time. And so this book is about using sensors with the Raspberry Pi Pico. And well, so the Pi Pico is a very interesting board. It's more or less new. It was launched 2 years ago, I think. And it's a small board. It's affordable. And it's easy to get. Nowadays, this is important because we have a shortage of chips. And I say that it's also a playful board. Its main microcontroller is built by the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and it got a nice set of features, and you can do a lot with it. It's very powerful. And it has some unique features, and we can use them, for example, with sensors. Sensors is the way that our software can glimpse what's happening in the real world. So most of the projects you do with microcontrollers, you have some kind of sensors that will give you some idea of what's happening, and then you process this data and then decide what to do. So this is the basic of all embedded systems we have around. So the idea of this book is talking about these sensors, first in a more general way. What are sensors? How can we get data from them? How do we process that? How do we make sure that we are getting the right data? Because sometimes sensors will just give you a number. Okay. What does this number mean? If it say that the temperature is 30 degrees, is that what's really happening? What can go wrong with sensors? So I talk a little about this, about how we should go about averaging reading, so that if there is a fluke reading, you can discard it. And then we get to the point about microcontroller connecting to a sensor. There are many ways. Some are more or less standard. You have some serial connections that are more or less the same regardless of what sensor you're using. Some sensors use some custom ways, custom signaling to get information between the sensor and the microcontroller. So I talk a little about these interfaces. And then I get to the code part. You can program the Raspberry Pi Pico in a lot of ways, and I choose 4 of them to talk in the book, to use for the examples. So you have the C++ language, and you can use that with the SDK, official SDK that is made by the Raspberry Pi Foundation. So this is very low-end, very low-level code. You have to write a lot to shape things. That is where we got most control. Then, still working with C++ and C, you have the Arduino environment, the Arduino IDE. I opted to use an unofficial port of the Arduino libraries for the Raspberry Pi Pico. It's very interesting, and the advantage of this is that you can use this more or less the same way that you use with other boards, other Arduino boards. You can use the Raspberry Pi Pico and the other way around. And then you have MicroPython. This is another interesting thing. When you think about having a powerful microcontroller, the first idea you have, I'll do things faster, or I'll have greater performance. But it's not just that. if you have more power, you can use it to make things in more sophisticated way, let us say. So what they did was they got the Python interpreter and got it running right here in this little chip in the board. So this makes writing software a lot easier. You can write and to achieve more, writing less code. So I talk about MicroPython, and MicroPython has some libraries for using the interface of the microcontroller. And last, there is CircuitPython. It's a fork of the MicroPython. Some people decided that they did not like some ways that their MicroPython works, so they make this fork, this different version, and it still got the same Python language, but the way that you talk to the interface is different. You could say that MicroPython gives better support for features that are particular to one board, while CircuitPython tries to get to a more generic way. You can write code that will work more or less the same in all the boards. You have to change less code to go from one board to another. So both approaches are interesting, and that's why I decided to talk about both of them. So when I talk about the sensor, what I'll say about it, first I'll talk about how it does its sensing. Give some idea how it is internally, so you can understand how it's trying to get this information from the environment and convert it into a number. Then I'll talk about how this sensor connects to the microcontroller, what kind of interface it uses, and there are some consequences to that. For example, there are some sensors that use some custom ways where you have to check for times, for very short times, and so this is something that is hard to do on some boards, especially if you try to do other things. So if your programming language allows you to use some special features of the Pi Pico, then you can have a better performance overall, let's say. So this is something that I talk about. And then there is the details of the sensor itself, about what are the specs. Not all temperature sensors are the same. Some will give a result with more or less 2 degrees Celsius, which I think it's a little too much. Some will have a better precision, but it will cost more, and will have another disadvantages. So you have to look at all the sensors and figure out which one is better for your project. So we look about these details, and then there is the sample code. I'll show how to use the sensors with this for environments that are selected for programming.
Thanks very much for that really great description of your book. I mean, it's really fantastic. I hate to cut you off, but we do try to keep these videos a little bit short for people. But I just want to say, you mentioned the term adventure. And I want, for people who aren't familiar with the sort of world of Raspberry Pi and stuff like that, might sound a little bit daunting, like, electrical engineering and stuff like that, but it's fun. Daniel's book is fun. And it really introduces you to sort of like, kind of really thinking about how sensors work and how you can set things up. And it's just really great for anybody, whether you've been in this world for a little while or whether you're brand new. So thank you very much, Daniel, for being on this launch video.
Okay. Just to finish, this book is right now, I'm still writing the book. It is a work in progress. There are 5 chapters right now that are ready. And it will go, I pretend to, I hope to deliver one of the grade per month and finish the book by September.
Perfect. Thank you very much.